Have you ever won the lottery and told absolutely no one? 3 months ago, I won $50 million in the Mega Millions jackpot. I didn't tell my mother, my brother, or even my best friend. I quietly hired a financial attorney, set up an LLC, and continued working my shifts as an emergency room nurse like nothing had changed. Then came Thanksgiving dinner at the Ritz-Carlton, where my mother stood up in front of 50 relatives and demanded I give my brother all my savings to cover his failed business debts, calling me worthless and a disappointment to the family name. My name is Buckley Nolan. I'm 32 years old, and this is the story of how a DNA test, a lottery ticket, and one Thanksgiving dinner changed everything my family thought they knew about blood, money, and who really deserved inheritance. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. Let me take you back to before everything changed. 3 months ago, I was just another exhausted nurse pulling 12-hour shifts at Boston General Hospital. Every night, I'd clock in at 7 p.m., tend to gunshot wounds, overdoses, and car accidents until 7 the next morning. The work was brutal but meaningful. I made $75,000 a year. Decent money by most standards, but in my family, I might as well have been unemployed. I lived in a 500-square-foot studio apartment in Dorchester, the kind where you could hear your neighbor's TV through the walls, and the radiator clanged like a ghost was trapped inside. My 2010 Honda Civic had 180,000 miles on it and a check engine light that had been on since Obama's second term. But I was proud of what I'd built. After 8 years of careful budgeting, eating ramen more nights than I'd like to admit, and picking up every overtime shift available, I'd managed to save $30,000. Every Friday, I had one small tradition that kept me sane. After my shift, I'd stop at Chen's Corner Store, Smith's Corner Store, and buy a single Mega Millions ticket, $2. That was my only indulgence, my only what if in a life full of certainties. The Pakistani owner, Mr. Smith, would always joke, "Maybe today's your day, Buckley." I'd laugh and say, "From your mouth to God's ears." The thing is, I never really expected to win. The ticket was more like a prayer, a tiny rebellion against the practical life I'd built. I'd tuck it into my wallet next to my hospital ID and forget about it until the next Friday rolled around. Looking back now, it's almost funny how ordinary everything was, how completely unprepared I was for what was coming. My family dynamics were complicated, to put it mildly. My mother, Patricia Nolan, had 2 children but only one favorite, and it wasn't me. My older brother Brandon was 35, 3 years older than me, and had failed at every business venture he'd ever attempted. First, it was a food truck that never got the proper permits. Then a cryptocurrency consulting firm that launched right before the market crashed. Most recently, a luxury car rental service that ended when he crashed the first car himself. Each failure cost between $50,000 and $100,000. Each time, Mom would refinance something, liquidate an investment, or guilt extended family into supporting Brandon's vision. She'd say things like, "Your brother has the Nolan entrepreneurial spirit, just like your father had." Meanwhile, I was the disappointment. When I got accepted to nursing school, Mom's response was, "Well, I suppose someone needs to do those jobs." When I graduated with honors, she spent my graduation dinner talking about Brandon's latest opportunity. When I got promoted to charge nurse, she asked why I wasn't in medical school instead. "Doctors make real money, Buckley. Nurses just clean up after them." The comparisons were constant and cruel. "Brandon takes risks," she'd say. "You play it too safe." Or my personal favorite, "You just don't have that special something that makes a Nolan successful. Brandon inherited that from your father." My dad, Robert, had died 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack. He'd been different, quieter, kinder. He used to sneak me encouragement when Mom wasn't looking. "You're doing great, sweetheart," he'd whisper. "Don't let anyone tell you different." Sometimes I wondered if he knew something I didn't about why Mom treated me like an outsider in my own family. There were signs looking back. Things that didn't quite add up, but that you dismiss because, well, what's the alternative? Believing your whole family is built on a lie? The physical differences were hard to ignore. Our family was Irish through and through, pale skin, light eyes, fair hair that turned reddish in the summer. I had Dad's exact coloring: strawberry blonde hair, green eyes, freckles that multiplied every time I saw sunlight. But Brandon? He had thick black hair, dark brown eyes, and skin that tanned instead of burned. Mom always said he took after her father, but I'd seen pictures of Grandpa Murphy. That man was as Irish as a shamrock. Then there were the comments. Dad would sometimes look at me with this sad smile and say things like, "You're my true legacy, Buckley. Never forget that." Once, after Brandon had convinced Mom to mortgage the house for his second business venture, Dad pulled me aside. "Take care of yourself first," he said. "Promise me, when the time comes, you'll understand." The weirdest moment happened about a year before Dad died. I'd come home early from a shift and found him in his study with papers spread across his desk. When he saw me, he quickly gathered them up, but not before I glimpsed what looked like medical letterhead. "Just insurance stuff," he'd said, but his hands were shaking. After he died, his lawyer, Mr. Peterson, had pulled me aside at the funeral. "Your father left instructions," he'd said quietly. "There are documents in my safe. When the time is right, you'll know." I'd been too grief-stricken to ask what he meant. Now I wonder if Dad had been planning for something all along, some revelation he knew would eventually come to light. August 15th. That's a date I'll never forget. I'd just finished a particularly brutal shift. We'd lost a teenager in a motorcycle accident and I was emotionally drained. I stopped at Smith's Corner store like always, bought my ticket, and drove home in a fog of exhaustion. 3 days later, I was eating cereal for dinner when I remembered to check the numbers. I pulled up the Mega Millions website on my phone with one hand while spooning Lucky Charms with the other. The winning numbers were 07 14 23 38 45, Megaball 02. I looked at my ticket. 07 14 23 38 45, Megaball 02. I stared, blinked, refreshed the website. The numbers didn't change. My spoon clattered into the bowl, splashing milk across my thrift store table. I checked again, and again, and again. $50 million. The jackpot was $50 million. I sat in complete silence for what felt like hours, but was probably 10 minutes. Then I got in my car and drove to the parking lot of a closed Best Buy. I sat there in the dark, shaking. Not from excitement, from terror. Because in that moment, I knew everything was about to change, and I also knew exactly what my family would do if they found out. My phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. "Hey, sis. Need to borrow 5K. Investment opportunity, can't miss it. Mom says you're good for it." That's when I made the decision. No one would know. Not Mom, not Brandon, not even my best friend Sarah. I would handle this alone, quietly, strategically. Because $50 million doesn't just change your bank account. It reveals exactly who the people around you really are. And I already had a pretty good idea. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years and started Googling what to do if you win the lottery. Every article said the same thing. Get a lawyer, stay anonymous, don't tell anyone. Check, check, and check. I found Marcus Webb of Webb & Associates through a Boston Globe article about lottery winners who'd successfully stayed anonymous. His office was in a gleaming tower downtown, the kind of place where my Honda looked like a delivery vehicle in the parking garage. His assistant offered me sparkling water in actual crystal glasses while I waited. Marcus was nothing like I expected. Young, maybe 45, with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. "Ms. Nolan," he said after I showed him the ticket with trembling hands, "the first thing we're going to do is put this in my safe. The second is to set up an LLC to claim the prize anonymously. Massachusetts allows this, thankfully." We spent 3 hours planning. I'd take the lump sum, $30 million after taxes. The money would go into a trust, then be distributed to various investments and accounts, all under company names. I could buy property through the LLC. I could travel without anyone knowing how I afforded it. What about your family? Marcus asked. These situations can get complicated. They can't know, I said firmly. Not yet, maybe not ever. He nodded slowly. I understand. We'll make sure everything is airtight. But Buckley, he leaned forward, this kind of secret has a way of coming out. When it does, you'll want protection in place. I thought about Mom's latest demand that I contribute more to Brandon's ventures. About the family dinners where I was reminded of my selfishness for not sharing my nurse's salary. Then we'd better make sure that protection is bulletproof. For 2 months, I lived a double life that would have made a spy novelist proud. By day, or rather by night, I was still Buckley the emergency room nurse, wearing scrubs I'd bought at Walmart and eating cafeteria food. I kept my studio apartment, kept driving my ancient Honda, kept buying generic groceries at Market Basket. But in secret, I was building an empire. Through my LLC, I purchased a penthouse in Monaco with a view of the Mediterranean. I bought a Gulfstream G650 that sat fueled and ready at Logan Airport's private terminal. My investment portfolio grew by millions while I ate ramen on my lunch break. The hardest part was maintaining the act around my family. When Mom called to complain about my cheap birthday gift to Brandon, a $50 Amazon card, I bit my tongue. When Brandon texted asking for another loan, claiming he'd pay back the previous $5,000 any day now, I replied that I was broke until payday. Every lie tasted bitter, but not as bitter as the truth of how they'd treat me if they knew. My coworkers started noticing something, though. You seem different, said Janet, another nurse. More confident, more peaceful? She was right. There's something liberating about knowing you could walk away at any moment. Every insult from Mom, every demand from Brandon, every 12-hour shift from hell, I endured it all with a secret smile. Because I knew something they didn't. I had an escape plan. Marcus called occasionally with updates. Your Monaco property is ready for occupancy, he'd say carefully, knowing I was usually at work. Or, the investment in the tech startup paid off. Another $2 million in returns. Meanwhile, I microwaved my lunch in the break room and listened to doctors complain about their student loans. The call came on a Tuesday night while I was checking on a patient with chest pains. Brandon was crying, actually crying, which he only did when he needed money. Buck, I'm screwed, like really screwed this time. His voice was thick with panic. The luxury car thing. I owe $200,000. They're threatening to sue. Mom's freaking out. I stepped into the supply closet for privacy. $200,000? How is that even possible? I had investors, but they pulled out. The cars were already leased. There was an accident, not my fault, but insurance won't cover it because of some technicality. Mom says you have savings. She says you've been hoarding money while I'm drowning. There it was. Even in his desperation, the accusation. I was the selfish one for saving my money instead of funding his disasters. Brandon, I'm a nurse. Where would I get $200,000? Mom says you have at least $30,000 saved. That would help with the lawyers, buy me time to figure things out. My phone buzzed with another call. Mom. I have to go. Patient emergency, I lied. Mom's voicemail was predictable. Buckley, call me immediately. This family is in crisis, and it's time you stepped up. Your brother needs help, and you're sitting on money like some kind of miser. Your father would be ashamed. That last part stung, but not how she intended. Dad would be ashamed. Of her, of Brandon, of what they'd become, or maybe what they'd always been. Marcus had warned me something like this would happen. When desperate people smell money, even money they don't know exists, they become dangerous, he'd said. Looking back, I should have seen what was coming. The Thanksgiving ambush was inevitable. They just needed the right audience to maximize the pressure. The invitation came through the family group text, which should have been my first red flag. Mom never used group texts for important things. She preferred individual calls where she could apply personalized pressure. Mandatory Family Thanksgiving at the Ritz-Carlton, Boston. November 23rd, 6 p.m. I've invited the entire extended family. Cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone. 50 people confirmed. This is about our family's future, no excuses. The Ritz-Carlton? Mom hadn't splurged on anything since Dad died. The last family gathering was at a Chili's. My cousin texted me privately, "What's going on? Your mom called my mom 3 times to make sure we'd come. She's never cared if we showed up before." Brandon was suspiciously quiet on social media, which meant Mom had told him to lay low. The last time he went silent like this was right before Mom announced she was refinancing the house to fund his food truck. I called in sick for Thanksgiving at the hospital, something I'd never done before. My supervisor was shocked. "But you always volunteer for holiday shifts. Are you okay?" "Family obligation," I said. "Apparently it's mandatory." I spent the next week with a growing sense of dread. Mom called twice to confirm I'd be there, each time mentioning how important it was that I attend. "Wear something nice," she added. "Not your usual, practical clothes." The night before Thanksgiving, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my tiny apartment, looking at my phone with the photos from my Monaco penthouse hidden in a locked folder. One swipe and I could be on my jet, flying away from whatever ambush they were planning. But I needed to face this. Marcus had prepared everything. "If things go south," he'd said, "just send me a text. I'll handle the rest." I had no idea how far south things would actually go. Thanksgiving morning, I did something I'd never done before. I put on my grandmother's pearl necklace, the one thing Dad had specifically left to me, and took a selfie in the cabin of my Gulfstream. The contrast was perfect. Me in my $40 Target dress and priceless pearls, sitting in a $50 million jet. I saved it to my locked folder, then took another photo, just the view from the window, champagne and caviar visible on the table, perfect for sending quickly if needed. My phone rang. Marcus. "Just checking in before the holiday," he said carefully. "Everything is in order on my end. The documents we discussed are ready for delivery if you give the word." "What documents?" I asked, confused. "The ones your father's lawyer, Mr. Peterson, transferred to me last month. He said you'd know when it was time. Something about DNA tests and inheritance clauses." My heart stopped. DNA tests? I haven't opened them, per Peterson's instructions, but they're dated 2009, notarized and witnessed. Should I be on standby today? 2009. The year Dad had acted so strange, shuffling papers whenever I walked in. The year Mom had suddenly stopped mentioning her college boyfriend, Jim Morrison, who'd mysteriously moved to California. "Yes," I said quietly. "Stay ready." I drove to the Ritz in my Honda, watching it sputter and wheeze up the valet ramp. The valet actually asked if I was there for the staff entrance. "No," I said, handing him the keys. "I'm here for the Nolan family Thanksgiving." His expression shifted from dismissive to pitying. Apparently, Mom had made quite an impression setting up this event. I stood outside the entrance for a moment, pearl necklace hidden under my coat. Whatever was about to happen, I was ready. The Ritz-Carlton lobby looked like something out of a movie. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and the kind of quiet that only money can buy. My Target flat squeaked against the polished floor as I made my way to the private dining room. The valet lot had been a preview of what I was walking into. Uncle Patrick's Mercedes, Aunt Margaret's Bentley, Cousin Michael's new Tesla. And there, trying to hide a massive dent in the bumper, Brandon's Porsche, or what was left of his rental fleet. "Buckley!" My cousin Jennifer rushed over, designer heels clicking. "Oh my God, I haven't seen you in years. Still at the hospital?" She said hospital the way people say DMV, like it was a necessary but unfortunate place. Before I could answer, Aunt Margaret appeared. She'd always been the only one who stood up for me. "You look lovely, dear," she said, but her eyes were worried. "Your mother's been intense about this dinner. Be careful." The private dining room was spectacular. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Boston Common, now draped in holiday lights. 50 chairs around tables set with actual gold-rimmed china. This had to cost at least $20,000. Mom stood at the center like a general surveying her troops, wearing a St. John suit I knew she couldn't afford. Brandon was beside her in a clearly rented tuxedo, his face puffy from stress, or drinking, or both. "Buckley!" Mom's voice carried across the room. "Finally! Come here!" Every head turned. 50 members of Boston's Irish-American elite, all watching me walk past in my Target dress. "Everyone," Mom announced. "Buckley's here, our nurse." The emphasis on nurse was subtle but clear. "Sit there, dear." She pointed to a chair at the far end, notably separated from the family table. The dinner started with Mom playing the perfect hostess, something she hadn't done since Dad's funeral. She clinked her champagne glass, Cristal, I noticed, at least $300 a bottle, and stood. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. Family is everything, isn't it? In times of joy and especially in times of," she paused dramatically, "challenge." Brandon shifted in his seat, sweat already beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. He kept checking his phone, probably Googling bankruptcy lawyers. The cousins were comparing vacation photos on their phones. Cousin Michael's kids at their Swiss ski school. Jennifer's new beach house in the Hamptons. Meanwhile, the waiter had to ask me twice if I wanted the chicken or fish because I was calculating how much this circus was costing. "Buckley seems distracted," Uncle Patrick said loudly. "Working too many shifts, dear? You look tired." "She always looks tired," Mom interjected with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "But that's what happens when you choose service work." Aunt Margaret tried to intervene. "Nursing is noble work, Patricia. Buckley saves lives." "Of course," Mom said smoothly. "Someone has to do it. Though I always wondered what she could have achieved with more ambition. Like Brandon. Brandon, who hadn't held a job for more than 6 months in his entire life, actually nodded. "Not everyone has the entrepreneurial spirit," he added. The irony was so thick, I could have served it as dessert. Around me, relatives murmured agreement. The successful ones, the lawyers, doctors, business owners, all nodding along to the narrative that Brandon was the ambitious one while I was the family disappointment. Mom kept glancing at the clock. 7:15 p.m. Whatever she'd planned was coming soon. I could feel it building like pressure before a storm. As the main course arrived, $40 steaks, I watched half the table barely touch. Mom started her real performance. "You know," she began, voice carrying perfectly in the acoustic space. "Robert always said family means sacrifice, that we support each other no matter what." She dabbed her eyes with her napkin, though they were completely dry. "He'd be heartbroken to see how some of us have forgotten that lesson." The room grew quiet. Forks paused mid-air. Everyone loves family drama when it's not theirs. "Brandon," she continued, "has worked so hard to build something meaningful. Yes, he's faced setbacks. What entrepreneur hasn't? But he keeps fighting, keeps pushing forward. That takes courage." Brandon tried to look humble and courageous instead of hungover and desperate. He almost pulled it off. "But not everyone understands that kind of courage," Mom said, her gaze sliding to me. "Some people think small. They hoard their little paychecks, counting pennies while their family struggles. They choose safety over family." Aunt Margaret started to speak. "Patricia, I don't think—" "Margaret, please," Mom's voice turned sharp. "This is about our immediate family. Buckley knows what I'm talking about. Don't you, dear?" 50 pairs of eyes turned to me. I took a sip of water, staying silent. "Selfishness," Mom continued, "is a cancer in families. When one person has the means to help but chooses not to." She shook her head sadly. "Well, that's not how the Nolans do things. Or at least, it didn't used to be." My cousin Jennifer whispered to her husband, loud enough for me to hear, "Is she talking about Buckley? What could a nurse possibly have that Brandon needs?" The setup was perfect. Mom had painted me as the selfish one before even making her demand. At 7:30 exactly, Mom stood up and tapped her spoon against her crystal champagne glass. The room fell silent immediately. "I need to address something painful but necessary," she announced, her voice echoing off the walls. "Our family is facing a crisis. Brandon's business, his dream, is under attack by predatory creditors. He needs $200,000 by Monday, or he loses everything." Gasps rippled through the room. 200,000 was serious money, even for this crowd. "Now," Mom continued, "I've already mortgaged my house to help him previous times. I have nothing left to give." She paused for effect. "But someone in this room does." She turned and pointed directly at me. Every single person followed her finger. "Buckley has been saving money for years. Hoarding it, actually. $30,000 sitting in her bank account while her brother, her only brother, faces bankruptcy and ruin." The silence was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat. Brandon stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "I didn't want it to come to this," he said, voice cracking with practiced emotion. "But Buck, I'm desperate. You're my sister. That money could save my life." "She refuses to help," Mom announced to the room. "Her own brother, and she refuses, so I'm making this simple." Her voice turned ice cold. "Buckley, you will transfer that money to Brandon tonight, or you are no longer part of this family. You'll be removed from my will, banned from all family events, and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are." Uncle Patrick actually applauded. Finally, someone said it. Jennifer was recording on her phone. 3 other cousins had their cameras out too. 50 people waited for my response, most already shaking their heads at my selfishness. Brandon walked over to my chair, standing over me like he used to when we were kids, and he wanted my Halloween candy. "You know what your problem is, Buck?" His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're useless. You're nothing but a glorified janitor who cleans up other people's messes. Blood, vomit, shit, that's your life." Several relatives gasped, but no one defended me. "I'm trying to build something," he continued. "Create jobs, contribute to the economy. You'll die in that hospital, alone, with nothing to show for it but a savings account you were too selfish to share." Mom joined him, standing on my other side. "Your father would be disgusted. He built a business, created wealth, and you hoard your pathetic salary while wearing discount clothes and driving that embarrassment of a car." "The Honda's still running?" Uncle Patrick laughed. "Jesus, Buckley. That thing was old when Obama was elected." The laughter that followed was cruel, exclusive, the kind that bonds people together against someone else. "I'm calling your bank," Mom announced, pulling out her phone. "I know you use Bank of America. I'm telling them you're having a mental health crisis and I need access to your accounts as your emergency contact." "That's not how banks work," I said quietly, my first words since this started. "Oh, she speaks," Brandon mocked. "The nurse thinks she knows about finance now." Mom's face was red with rage. "You have 5 minutes to agree, or I'm calling every single person in our community, the church, the Irish American Association, everyone. They'll all know what you did, how you let your brother fall while counting your coins." Jennifer's camera was still recording. This would be on social media within hours. "Choose," Mom demanded. "Your money or your family." Can you believe a mother would do this to her own daughter? In front of 50 people at Thanksgiving dinner? If you've ever dealt with toxic family members who only see you as an ATM, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Share where you're watching from and tell me, would you have walked out or stayed to fight? Let's see what I did next. I stood up slowly, smoothing down my target dress. The room held its breath, probably expecting tears or screaming or capitulation. Instead, I picked up my water glass and took a long, deliberate sip. "I need to use the restroom," I said calmly. "Excuse me for 5 minutes." Mom's face went from red to purple. "You're walking away? In the middle of this?" "Nature calls," I said with a slight smile. 5 minutes. Brandon grabbed my arm as I passed. "Don't you dare leave." I looked down at his hand, then up at his face. Something in my expression made him let go immediately. The walk to the bathroom felt like a mile. 50 pairs of eyes burning into my back, whispers erupting behind me. Is she really just going to the bathroom? Maybe she's going to transfer the money. She looked way too calm. In the bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and pulled out my phone. My hands were perfectly steady as I opened my locked folder and selected the photo from the jet. The timestamp showed it was from this morning: champagne, caviar, and the Mediterranean coastline visible through the Gulf Stream window. I opened our family group chat, the one with all 50 relatives who were currently sitting in that dining room. My thumb hovered over the send button for exactly 3 seconds. Then I typed, "Sorry, I'm busy. Happy Thanksgiving." Send. I washed my hands, reapplied my drugstore lip gloss, and looked at myself in the mirror. The same face that had been called worthless 5 minutes ago. The same person who'd been cleaning up messes, saving lives, and apparently sitting on a $50 million secret. Time to go back and watch the show. I heard the first phone buzz before I even opened the bathroom door. Then another. Then dozens, like a swarm of digital bees. Walking back into that dining room was like entering a freeze frame. Mom stood frozen mid-gesture, her phone in her hand, mouth open. Brandon had dropped his phone entirely, his face white as the tablecloth. Around the room, relatives stared at their screens, then at me, then back at their screens. "What the hell is this?" Brandon's voice cracked like a teenager's. The photo was perfect. The Gulf Stream's cream leather interior, the Waterford crystal champagne flutes, the tin of beluga caviar that cost more than most people's rent, and through the window, the unmistakable Monte Carlo coastline. "That's..." Aunt Margaret started laughing, actually laughing. "Oh my God, Patricia, you absolute fool! It's fake!" Mom shrieked. "It has to be fake. She makes $75,000 a year." Jennifer zoomed in on her phone. "The metadata says it was taken this morning. That's a Gulfstream G650. Those cost $50 million. "Could be a charter," Uncle Patrick said weakly. "Even a charter would be $20,000 for that flight," Jennifer's husband added. He worked in private aviation. "And look at the angle. That's taken from the owner's suite." Brandon grabbed Mom's phone, staring at the image like it might change if he looked hard enough. "This is impossible. You're a nurse. You're nobody. You're nothing." "Apparently not," Aunt Margaret said dryly. The room erupted. Everyone talking at once, theories flying. Inheritance, lottery, secret boyfriend. Meanwhile, I stood perfectly still by the door, watching my family's entire worldview crumble in real time. Mom's legs gave out. She had to grab Brandon's arm to stay upright. The private dining room descended into complete chaos. 50 of Boston's most prominent Irish-American families were witnessing the most spectacular Thanksgiving meltdown in recent memory. "How long have you been hiding this?" Mom's voice was shrill, desperate. "How long have you been lying to us?" Brandon lunged toward me. "You let me beg? You let me grovel for money while you had millions?" Two cousins had to hold him back. Jennifer was live streaming now, narrating to her followers. "You guys, my cousin just revealed she's secretly rich after her mom tried to humiliate her. This is insane." "It's photoshopped," Mom kept insisting. "Someone check if it's photoshopped." Jennifer's husband pulled up some app on his phone. "No digital manipulation detected. This is real." The waitstaff stood frozen by the walls, probably wondering if they should keep serving dessert or call security. Uncle Patrick, who'd been mocking my Honda an hour ago, tried a different approach. "Buckley, sweetheart, we're family. Whatever's happening here, we can work through it." "Now I'm sweetheart?" I asked. 5 minutes ago, I was driving in embarrassment. Brandon broke free and got close enough to grab my shoulders. "Where did you get the money? Where?" "Let go of her!" Aunt Margaret stood up, surprisingly fierce for a 70-year-old. "Can't you see what you've done? You pushed her to this." Mom was crying now, real tears this time. "Buckley, please, just explain. Make this make sense." The room fell quiet, waiting for my answer. 50 people, some still recording, all desperate to understand how the family disappointment had become the family mystery. I pulled out my phone and started typing. "What are you doing?" Mom demanded as I typed on my phone. "Something I should have done years ago," I replied, systematically going through my contacts. Block. Patricia Nolan. Block. Brandon Nolan. Block. Patrick O'Brien. Block. Jennifer Fitzgerald. "You're blocking us?" Brandon's voice pitched higher with each word. "You can't just block your family." "Watch me." I went through every platform: Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, even LinkedIn. Each block felt like cutting a chain that had held me down for 32 years. "Buckley, stop this immediately," Mom commanded, using the voice that had controlled me my entire childhood. But I wasn't that scared little girl anymore. "I'm done," I said, sliding my phone into my pocket. "Done being your ATM. Done being your disappointment. Done pretending we're a family when all you see is what you can take from me." "You owe us an explanation," Brandon shouted. "I owe you nothing." I picked up my purse. "The same nothing you've given me for 32 years except criticism and demands." Mom tried one last manipulation. "Your father would be ashamed of you walking out on family." That stopped me at the door. I turned back. "Dad? Dad left me something before he died. Documents, truths. Maybe you should be worried about what Dad would think of you." Her face went white. "What documents?" But I was already walking out, my Target flats clicking against marble for the last time. Behind me, the room exploded again. Questions, shouts, Mom's voice rising above it all. "Buckley! Buckley!" The valet looked shocked when I asked for my Honda. "But the dinner is over," I said, handing him $100 tip. His first glimpse that maybe there was more to me than the car suggested. The next 48 hours were almost comedic in their desperation. Since I'd blocked them all digitally, Mom and Brandon had to get creative. They showed up at my apartment building at 2 a.m., buzzing every unit until a neighbor threatened to call the cops. The joke's on them. I'd been staying at the Four Seasons under my LLC's name since Thanksgiving afternoon. Brandon went to Boston General, told the security guard he was my brother, and there was a family emergency. The charge nurse, Janet, called me. "Your brother's here acting crazy. Should I call security?" "I don't have a brother," I said simply. "Must be a confused patient." They tried calling my work directly, but HR had strict policies about giving out employee information. Then they got desperate and started calling my old college friends. Most hadn't heard from me in years and were confused why my family didn't have my current number. The social media storm was something else. Jennifer's video had gone viral in our community. "Toxic mom demands daughter's savings, gets shocking response." The comments were split between people calling me selfish and others saying they'd have done the same thing. Someone leaked that I'd been seen at Logan Airport's private terminal. Mom actually drove there and tried to convince the staff to tell her where I'd flown. They wouldn't even confirm I'd been there. Meanwhile, I was in Monaco, sitting on my terrace, watching the sun set over the Mediterranean. Marcus had called to confirm the package was ready for delivery. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he'd asked. "Once these documents are delivered, there's no going back." I thought about Mom's face when she'd called me worthless. Brandon saying I was nothing. Send it. Monday morning, 9 a.m. Sharp. Mom was home. Marcus had confirmed it through his investigator. She'd taken the day off work, probably still trying to figure out how to find me. The FedEx truck pulled up to the Victorian house in Brookline that I'd grown up in, the one Mom had mortgaged twice for Brandon's failures. The delivery required a signature. Mom must have seen the sender's label, Webb and Associates, Estate and Trust Law, because according to the FedEx driver's confirmation, her hands were shaking when she signed. Brandon was there too. He'd been sleeping on Mom's couch since Thanksgiving, apparently too broke to keep his own apartment. They opened the package together at the kitchen table, where we'd had so many family dinners, where I'd been told so many times that I wasn't enough. The package was thick, official, with multiple documents in a leather portfolio. On top was a cover letter on Marcus's letterhead. Dear Mrs. Nolan and Mr. Morrison, we represent Ms. Buckley Nolan in matters regarding her estate and inheritance. Enclosed, you will find documents relevant to your recent demands for financial support, as well as materials pertaining to the estate of the late Robert Nolan. Please review all materials carefully. No response is required or desired. Regards, Marcus Webb, Senior Partner. Mom's reading glasses, the ones she pretended she didn't need, came out immediately. She opened the first document, and according to the neighbor who happened to be gardening by the window, they heard her scream from outside. The first document was a certified copy of my lottery ticket. $50 million. Mega Millions. Claimed through an LLC 3 months ago, just as I'd said. But that was just the appetizer. The lottery documentation was comprehensive and undeniable. Marcus had included everything: the authenticated winning ticket, the claim form filed with Massachusetts State Lottery Commission, the wire transfer confirmation showing $30 million after taxes deposited into my LLC's account. Mom stared at the numbers like they might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. $30 million, she whispered. She had $30 million. Brandon grabbed the papers, his face cycling through disbelief, rage, and something that looked almost like grief. She won this in August. August. I've been begging her for money for 3 months while she had $30 million. The bank statements were next. Multiple accounts, investment portfolios, real estate holdings, the Monaco penthouse purchase for 4.2 million euros, the Gulfstream GC650 for 48 million, a portfolio worth another 10 million in diverse investments. She could have saved me 100 times over, Brandon said, his voice hollow. It would have been nothing to her. Pocket change. Mom found her voice. That ungrateful! After everything I've done for her. I raised her, I fed her, You called her worthless, Brandon interrupted, staring at the papers. We called her worthless in front of 50 people, while she was worth more than everyone in that room combined. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. The daughter they'd humiliated for being just a nurse could have bought the entire Ritz-Carlton if she'd wanted to. Mom's phone started ringing. Word was already spreading through the family grapevine. Everyone who'd witnessed Thanksgiving wanted to know if the rumors were true. Was Buckley really a multimillionaire? But they weren't done with the package. The worst, or best, depending on your perspective, was yet to come. The next document was in a sealed envelope marked Confidential, DNA Analysis, 2009. Mom's face went from red to white in seconds. No, she whispered. Robert promised he destroyed this. Brandon looked confused. Destroyed what? What is this? With shaking fingers, Mom opened the envelope. Inside were DNA test results from Boston Genetics Laboratory, dated November 15th, 2009. 3 samples had been tested: Robert Nolan, Patricia Nolan, and Brandon Nolan. The results were crystal clear. Brandon Nolan, alleged father; Robert Nolan, probability of paternity, 0%. Brandon Nolan, alleged father; James Morrison, probability of paternity, 99.97%. A second test was included. Buckley Nolan, alleged father; Robert Nolan, probability of paternity, 99.99%. Brandon read it 3 times before the words sank in. James Morrison, Mom's college boyfriend James Morrison? Mom collapsed into her chair. Robert wasn't supposed to keep these. He promised. You knew. Brandon's voice broke completely. You knew I wasn't Dad's son and you never told me? The truth was laid bare. The golden child, the one with the Nolan business sense, the favored son. He wasn't a Nolan at all. He was the product of an affair Mom had before I was born. Meanwhile, I, the disappointment, the one who didn't inherit the family talent, I was Robert Nolan's only biological child. This is why, Brandon said slowly, puzzle pieces clicking into place. This is why you always pushed me harder, gave me everything. You were covering, you were guilty. Mom was sobbing now, real tears for the first time I could remember. I was young. I made a mistake. Robert forgave me. We moved past it. But you never forgave Buckley for being his real daughter. The final document was the killing blow. A notarized codicil to Robert Nolan's will, dated December 1st, 2009, just 2 weeks after the DNA test. I, Robert Nolan, being of sound mind and body, do hereby amend my last will and testament with the following irrevocable provision. In the event that DNA evidence proving Brandon Nolan is not my biological son becomes public knowledge, whether through disclosure by any party or court order, the following shall take immediate effect. 1. All assets previously designated for Brandon Nolan shall transfer immediately to my biological daughter, Buckley Nolan. 2. The family home at 47 Beacon Hill shall become sole property of Buckley Nolan. 3. The investment portfolio currently valued at $2 million shall transfer to Buckley Nolan. 4. Patricia Nolan shall retain only her personal belongings and the $50,000 savings account in her name. This codicil was created after discovering Brandon's true parentage. I chose to raise him as my son regardless, but I will not allow my biological daughter to be disinherited in favor of another man's child should the truth emerge. Witnessed this day by Marcus Webb, attorney, Janet Peterson, notary, Michael O'Brien, CPA. Mom's sobs turned to wails. Michael O'Brien, Patrick's brother. They all knew. Everyone knew but Brandon. Brandon stood up so fast his chair fell over. So not only am I not Dad's son, but now I lose everything? The house, the investments, everything? It's already done, Mom whispered, reading the attached legal notice. Marcus Webb filed the transfer papers with the court this morning. It's all Buckley's now. The house they were sitting in. The money Mom was counting on for retirement. Everything. She destroyed us, Brandon said. She completely destroyed us. At the very bottom of the package was a handwritten letter on simple stationery, my handwriting, which Mom had once called too messy for a girl. Mom and Brandon. Mom and Dad knew the truth about Brandon's parentage, but he loved us both. He chose to be Brandon's father, even knowing the truth. That's what real family does. They choose love over blood. But you two never learned that lesson. You chose blood over love, except you got even that wrong. You tortured me for not being a true Nolan while Brandon played the prince. The irony would be funny if it hadn't cost me my childhood. I kept the lottery secret because I knew exactly what would happen. You'd demand every penny while calling me selfish for hesitating. You'd take it all and still say I owed you more. I was right. Brandon, despite everything, I'm enclosing a certified check for $200,000. Not because you deserve it, but because Dad would want me to help you one last time. This clears your debts. What you do next is up to you, but you'll do it without the Nolan name. You're James Morrison's son. Maybe it's time you met him. Mom, you made your choices. You chose favorites based on guilt. You chose cruelty over kindness. You chose to humiliate me in front of 50 people. Now you get to live with those choices. The house will be sold. I'm donating the proceeds to Boston General's Nursing Scholarship Fund. Dad's money will help people who actually save lives instead of destroying them. This is goodbye. Don't look for me. Don't contact my lawyers. Don't pretend we're family. We never were. Buckley. P.S. That embarrassment of a Honda? I'm donating it to a single mom who works at the hospital. She cried with joy. That's what real gratitude looks like. Mom sat on the kitchen floor, still clutching the letter, looking every one of her 58 years and then some. The perfectly styled hair from Thanksgiving was unwashed, her St. John's suit replaced with a ratty bathrobe. I've lost everything, she whispered to no one. Both my children, my home, everything. Brandon stood over her, but not with comfort. His face was stone. Your son? I'm not your son. I'm your mistake. your dirty secret you covered up by destroying your real daughter. Brandon, please. My name isn't even Brandon Nolan, is it? It's Brandon Morrison. Everything about me is a lie you created. Mom reached for him, but he stepped back. You knew. Every time you gave me money, every time you called me the true heir, you knew I was nobody. You were just trying to convince yourself. The doorbell rang. More FedEx. This time it was an eviction notice. Since the house was now legally Buckley's, they had 30 days to vacate. 30 days, Mom laughed bitterly. She gave us 30 days. How generous. Brandon picked up the check Buckley had included. $200,000, more than enough to clear his debts and start over. She gave me more grace than you ever gave her, and I'm not even her real brother. We're family, Mom started. No, we're not. We're three strangers who lived in the same house. Dad knew it. Buckley knew it. You knew it. I was just the idiot who believed the lie. He walked to the door, check in hand. Where are you going? Mom called after him. To California, to find James Morrison, to find out who I really am. The door closed. Mom was alone. Brandon sat in his damaged Porsche outside the house, staring at the check. $200,000 from the sister he'd called worthless, the sister who wasn't even his sister. He pulled up Facebook on his phone and searched James Morrison, California. There he was, a successful real estate developer in San Diego. The resemblance was undeniable. Same dark hair, same brown eyes, same strong jaw. Everything Brandon had attributed to Grandpa Murphy's genes was staring back at him from a stranger's profile. His phone rang. Jennifer. Brandon, is it true? The DNA test? The money? How do you already know? Mom's housekeeper heard your mom crying and called Aunt Margaret. It's everywhere. The whole community knows. Brandon hung up. Within hours, everyone would know he wasn't Robert Nolan's son. 35 years of identity, gone. He thought about all the times he'd lorded his position over Buckley. I'm the son. I carry the family name. Dad would want me to have the business. You're just the daughter. You'll marry out of the family anyway. Every single word had been a lie he didn't know he was telling. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He opened it to find a message from Marcus Webb. Mr. Morrison, your sister wanted me to inform you that James Morrison has been notified of your existence and is willing to meet. He never knew about you. Patricia told him she miscarried. He's divorced, has no other children. He said you would be welcome in San Diego. M.W. Even now, even after everything, Buckley was helping him, setting him up with the father he never knew existed. Brandon started crying for the first time since his actual dad, Robert, had died. Plot twist! The golden child was actually the affair baby all along. Can you imagine finding out your entire family dynamic was built on a lie? If this story is hitting home, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Drop a comment. Do you think I was too generous giving Brandon the money? I want to hear your thoughts. Now, let's see how this family fallout ends. By Tuesday afternoon, the Irish-American community of Boston had the scandal of the decade. Jennifer's Thanksgiving video combined with the DNA revelation created a perfect storm of gossip. The family WhatsApp groups were on fire. Patricia had an affair? Brandon isn't Robert's son? Buckley won $50 million? She owns the Beacon Hill house now? At the Irish American Heritage Center, where Mom had served on the board for 20 years, an emergency meeting was called. They voted unanimously to remove her, citing conduct unbecoming of a board member. The church where our family had attended for 3 generations was buzzing. Father Murphy, who'd baptized both Brandon and me, shook his head sadly when asked about it. Pride goeth before a fall, was all he'd say. Brandon's business contacts disappeared overnight. Who wanted to work with someone whose entire identity was a fraud? The Porsche was repossessed Tuesday evening. Turns out he'd been 3 months behind on payments. Mom tried to go to her book club Wednesday morning. The hostess met her at the door. Patricia, given recent events, we think it's best if you take a break from the group. Recent events? You mean my daughter abandoning her family? We mean you humiliating that poor girl while hiding your own affair. We all saw the video, Patricia. The whole internet saw it. The video had indeed gone viral. Toxic mom demands daughter's money, doesn't know she's a millionaire, had 5 million views and counting. The comments were brutal. The mom got exactly what she deserved. Team Buckley all the way. Imagine finding out you're not the favorite because you're not the affair baby. Mom retreated to the house, Buckley's house now, and pulled all the curtains shut. While Mom hid from the world, one family member was trying to reach me. Aunt Margaret, Dad's sister, who'd always been the only one to defend me. She didn't have my new number, so she went through Marcus Webb's office. Dear Buckley, I'm not asking for your phone number or location. I respect your boundaries. I just needed you to know a few things. Your father told me about the DNA test the day after he got the results. He was devastated, not about Brandon, but about what it meant for you. He said, Margaret, I've been watching Patricia destroy Buckley to assuage her own guilt, and I've been too weak to stop it. He made me promise that if anything happened to him, I'd make sure you knew the truth. I failed in that promise, and I'm sorry. I should have stood up to Patricia years ago. I should have told you what I knew. Your father loved you more than you'll ever know. Every time Patricia criticized you, it broke his heart. He kept every article about your nursing achievements, every photo from your graduations. They're in a safety deposit box at Bank of America under your name. He set it up years ago. What you did at Thanksgiving was magnificent. Walking away with dignity while they showed their true colors, Robert would be so proud. Hell, I'm proud, and I barely did anything to earn the right. You don't owe any of us forgiveness or contact. But please know that not everyone in this family is blind to who you really are. A talented, compassionate woman who saved lives while being told she was worthless. You were never worthless. You were the only one of us worth a damn. All my love and respect, Aunt Margaret P.S. Your mother has no idea what she lost, but I think deep down she's starting to understand. While my family imploded back in Boston, I was living my actual life for the first time in 32 years. My Monaco penthouse was everything my studio apartment hadn't been. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Mediterranean, marble floors that stayed cool even in summer, and a kitchen I actually wanted to cook in. But the best part? The silence. No phone calls demanding money, no guilt trips, no comparisons to Brandon. I enrolled in French classes at the International University of Monaco. My classmates assumed I was just another rich American, and for once, that's exactly what I was. No explanations needed. 3 mornings a week, I volunteered at the Princess Grace Hospital, helping in their emergency department. The staff didn't know about my millions. To them, I was just Buckley, the American nurse with excellent trauma experience. It felt good to be valued for my skills again. Evenings were for myself. Sometimes I'd take the yacht out. Yes, I bought a yacht, because why not? And anchor in a quiet cove. Other times I'd sit on my terrace with a glass of wine that cost more than my old weekly groceries, reading medical journals and planning the foundation I wanted to create. The Nolan Foundation, named for my father, not my family. It would provide scholarships for nursing students and support for healthcare workers facing burnout. Real help for real people doing real work. Marcus called weekly with updates. The house sale was progressing. Mom and Brandon had both left Boston, him to California, her to stay with a cousin in Florida, who probably didn't know the full story yet. Any regrets? Marcus asked during one call. Yes. I looked out at the Mediterranean sunset, thought about my old life of constant criticism and emotional manipulation. Not a single one. Despite having no legal means to contact me, Brandon tried everything to reach out. His attempts would have been pathetic if they weren't so predictable. First, he hired a private investigator with part of the money I'd given him. The PI tracked me to Monaco, but couldn't get past the building's security or my legal protection. Marcus sent me a photo of the guy standing outside my building with a telephoto lens. Should I have him arrested? Marcus asked. No, I said. Let Brandon waste his money. Then came the emails to Marcus's office. Long, rambling apologies mixed with subtle requests for more money. I know I don't deserve Buckley's forgiveness, but I'm trying to change. Meeting James has been eye-opening. He's successful in real estate and offered to teach me the business. If Buckley could just loan me starting capital, maybe 500K, I could finally make something of myself and pay her back with interest. Marcus didn't even forward them anymore, just sent me a weekly count. 7 emails from Brandon this week. Same theme. The most desperate attempt was when Brandon created a fake Instagram account pretending to be a nursing colleague, trying to get information about my whereabouts. The account was so obviously fake. Stock photo profile picture, created the same day, only follower was Brandon's real account. I screenshotted it and sent it to my actual colleagues as a warning. Janet from Boston. General texted me. Your brother showed up again. This time claiming he had important medical information about your father. Security escorted him out. He's now banned from the premises. Even James Morrison, Brandon's biological father, reached out to Marcus. My son seems obsessed with contacting his sister. I've told him to respect her boundaries, but he won't listen. Please tell Ms. Nolan I'm sorry for his behavior. Mom's fall from grace was complete and brutal. The cousin in Florida, Diana, called Marcus's office after 2 weeks. I can't keep her here anymore, Diana said. She's delusional. Keeps saying Buckley stole her life, that this is all a conspiracy. She's telling everyone at my country club that her daughter is mentally ill and manipulated the legal system. It's embarrassing. Mom had to return to Boston, but with no house and no money except the $50,000 Dad had left her options were limited. She ended up in a studio apartment in Revere. Ironically, smaller than my old place and in a worse neighborhood. The ladies who lunch, her book club, the charity boards, everyone had cut her off. Patricia Nolan, who'd spent decades cultivating her image as a Boston Brahmin, was now persona non grata in every social circle that mattered to her. Someone sent me a photo from Facebook. Mom at a Dunkin' Donuts wearing an old coat, counting change for coffee. The woman who'd spent $20,000 on a Thanksgiving dinner to humiliate me couldn't afford a Starbucks latte. She tried getting a job, but at 58 with no work history except socialite, and with the scandal following her everywhere online, nobody would hire her. Even temp agencies turned her away after Googling her name. The final indignity came when she applied for government assistance. The same woman who'd mocked me for being working class was now standing in line at the welfare office. Margaret sent me one last update. Your mother asked me for money yesterday. I reminded her that she'd called me a meddling old woman at Thanksgiving when I tried to defend you. She hung up on me. I don't think she has anyone left. Good, I thought, and went back to my French homework. By January, all the legal matters were finalized. The Beacon Hill house sold for $3.2 million, more than Dad had estimated, thanks to the Boston real estate boom. True to my word, I donated every penny to Boston General's nursing scholarship fund. The announcement made the news. Anonymous donor establishes largest nursing scholarship in hospital history. They called it the Robert Nolan Memorial Fund. I made sure Mom would see it in the papers, knowing she couldn't claim any credit or connection. Dad's investment portfolio, now worth $2.3 million thanks to 5 years of market gains, was transferred to my accounts. I liquidated half and used it to establish the Nolan Foundation properly, with a board of directors that included Janet from the hospital and several other nurses who'd supported me over the years. The foundation's first initiative? Emergency grants for healthcare workers facing financial crisis. The kind of help I could have used when I was eating ramen 5 nights a week to save money. Marcus handled everything with surgical precision. Your mother tried to contest the will, he mentioned during our final meeting about the estate. She claimed undue influence and mental incapacity. And? The judge laughed, literally laughed. He said Robert Nolan's codicil was the most clear-headed, carefully constructed document he'd seen. Plus, having 3 witnesses, including a CPA who testified about your father's mental state, made it ironclad. The court records were public. Another humiliation for Mom. Her desperate grab for money she wasn't entitled to. Documented forever in Massachusetts legal archives. Anything else? I asked Marcus. Just this. Your father would be incredibly proud of how you've handled everything. Professional, dignified, and devastating. He chose the right daughter to trust. I signed the last document officially closing the estate matters. It was over. 6 months after Thanksgiving, my life had found its rhythm. I woke up each morning in Monaco to Mediterranean sunshine and coffee that cost more than my old hourly wage, and I didn't feel guilty about any of it. The Nolan Foundation had helped 43 nurses with emergency grants, paid for 12 nursing students' entire education, and funded a mental health program for healthcare workers at Boston General. Every thank you letter was worth more than Mom's approval ever could have been. I'd started dating someone, Philippe, a doctor at the hospital where I volunteered. He knew about my money but had his own family wealth, so it wasn't a factor. He'd never heard of the Thanksgiving incident, didn't know about Brandon or Mom. To him, I was just Buckley, the American nurse who spoke French with a Boston accent. My Instagram, now public and verified, thanks to the viral video, showed carefully curated glimpses of my new life. Sunset yacht photos, charity galas, the view from my penthouse. Every post got thousands of likes and hundreds of comments from people who'd followed the Thanksgiving drama. Queen, you showed them! Living your best life while they live with their choices. This is what boundaries look like. Brandon had viewed every story, despite being blocked. He'd created 17 fake accounts that I knew of. I let him look. Let him see what he could have had if he'd ever treated me like family instead of a bank account. Mom didn't have Instagram, but I knew she'd seen the photos. Jennifer, ever the gossip, would have made sure of that. The cousin who'd called me worthless was now watching me live the life she'd always wanted. Success really was the best revenge, but more than that, happiness was the best freedom. A year after Thanksgiving, I received an unexpected package through Marcus's office. Inside was a certified check for $200,000, the exact amount I'd given Brandon, and a letter. Buckley, I won't ask for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I won't make excuses because there aren't any. You were right. We were never really family. I was just too blinded by Mom's lies and my own ego to see it. James Morrison, my biological father, is a good man. He's taught me more about business and integrity in 1 year than I learned in 35. He's also taught me about accountability. This check represents my first successful real estate deal. I'm returning what you gave me, even though you owed me nothing. I know you'll probably donate it, and that's fine. You always were the generous one, even when we gave you no reason to be. Mom's alone now. I don't speak to her. She created this mess with her lies and favoritism, and I let her. I was her weapon against you, and I enjoyed it. That's on me. I'm not asking to be in your life. I'm just trying to be someone Robert Nolan wouldn't be ashamed of, even though I wasn't his son. He raised me better than I acted. Thank you for the money that let me start over. Thank you for connecting me with James. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like, walking away from people who don't deserve you. Brandon Morrison. I legally changed my name, seemed only right. I had Marcus deposit the check and donate it to the foundation under anonymous, in memory of Robert Nolan. It seemed fitting. Dad had raised Brandon despite everything. This was Brandon finally trying to honor that. It was the first mature thing Brandon had ever done. 1 year later, almost to the day, I hosted my own Thanksgiving dinner. Not at the Ritz-Carlton, but on my yacht, anchored in the Monaco harbor with the city lights reflecting off the water. My guests were the people who'd actually been family to me. Janet and 3 other nurses from Boston General who'd flown over for the holiday, Aunt Margaret who'd finally taken her first international flight at 71, Philippe and his sister, and Marcus Webb who'd become more friend than lawyer. We ate turkey that didn't come with a side of emotional manipulation. We shared what we were grateful for without anyone keeping score. When Janet raised her glass of champagne that cost more than her monthly car payment, she said, "To Buckley, who showed us all that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up when you need them." "And who doesn't tear you down when you succeed," added Margaret, shooting me a knowing look. There were no demands for money, no comparisons, no guilt trips, just laughter, genuine affection, and the kind of warmth I'd never felt at Mom's table. Philippe's sister, who'd heard the whole story, asked, "Do you ever regret cutting them off completely?" I thought about it, looking around at the people who'd supported me without condition, who celebrated my success instead of resenting it. "I regret that it took me 32 years to do it," I said. Margaret raised her glass again. "Robert would be so proud. Not of the money. He never cared about that. But of the woman you've become despite everything Patricia tried to do to you." We toasted Dad's memory with wine he would have loved, but never would have bought. Too practical to indulge even with millions in the bank. 2 years after Thanksgiving, Marcus forwarded me a letter from Mom. "She's been sending these monthly," he said. "This is the first one that seemed different. Buckley, I'm writing this from my apartment in Revere, the same neighborhood I once forbade you from visiting because it was beneath us. The irony isn't lost on me. I won't insult you with excuses. I was cruel, manipulative, and destroyed our family with my lies and favoritism. I see that now, alone with nothing but time to think. I loved Brandon more because he was evidence of my worst mistake. Every achievement of his felt like absolution for my affair. Every time I put him first, I was trying to prove to myself that something good came from my betrayal of your father. But you were Robert's daughter through and through. Your integrity, your kindness, your work ethic. Every good quality you have reminded me of what I'd done to him. So I punished you for it. I made you feel worthless because you made me feel worthless. I'm working now, at a grocery store. The manager is 23. Yesterday, a customer recognized me from Jennifer's video. They laughed. I wanted to die of shame, but then I remembered. This is what I did to you for 32 years. Made you feel small while everyone watched. I don't want forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I lost. Not the money. I lost my daughter long before you won the lottery. I lost you every time I chose Brandon. Every cruel word, every comparison. You're thriving without me. Good. You deserve every happiness I tried to steal from you. Patricia. I read it once, then filed it away. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt, and shouldn't be. The official launch of the Nolan Foundation happened at Boston General, in the same emergency department where I'd worked all those night shifts. We'd transformed the conference room into something magical. Photos of all the nurses we'd helped, testimonials from scholarship recipients, and a portrait of Dad that I'd commissioned. The press was there, local news covering the story of the mystery millionaire nurse who'd turned viral fame into philanthropic action. They didn't know the full story. The DNA test, Mom's affair, the inheritance switch. That was family business, or what used to be family. Dr. Harrison, the chief of staff who'd once barely noticed me, gave a speech about how I'd never forgotten where I came from. If only he knew I was trying desperately to forget exactly that. The first scholarship recipient, a single mom named Maria, who reminded me of myself 5 years ago, cried when she spoke. Ms. Nolan didn't just give me money. She gave me hope that someone like me, from nowhere special, could make something of ourselves. I announced the foundation's expansion. We were going national, helping nurses across America. The endowment was now $10 million, enough to help hundreds of healthcare workers yearly. Someone asked about my inspiration. I looked at Dad's portrait and said, "My father, Robert Nolan, believed in investing in people who actually do the work. He'd be proud that his legacy is helping people who save lives, not those who pretend to deserve help." Everyone applauded, not knowing I was throwing shade at my entire extended family. Later, Janet pulled me aside. Your mom applied for one of our emergency grants, used a fake name, but we recognized her information. What did you do? Denied it. She doesn't qualify as a healthcare worker. I smiled. Perfect. Standing on my terrace in Monaco, watching the sunrise paint the Mediterranean gold, I thought about how different my life would be if I'd never won the lottery. I'd still be in Boston, still working night shifts, still showing up to family dinners where I was the punchline to every joke about failure. Mom would still be calling me worthless while demanding my savings. Brandon would still be the golden child, failing upward with everyone's money but mine. The lottery didn't change who I was. It just gave me permission to stop pretending. To stop accepting crumbs of affection that came with a price tag. To stop believing that family meant taking whatever abuse they dished out. $50 million was life-changing money, but the real fortune was freedom. Freedom from guilt, from manipulation, from the constant message that I wasn't enough. Turns out I was more than enough. I was too much for them to handle once I had the power to say no. Philippe found me on the terrace, bringing coffee and croissants. He knew the whole story now, had seen the videos, read the news articles. Any regrets? He asked, the same question Marcus had posed months ago. One, I said. I regret that Dad didn't live to see this, to see me choose myself the way he always wanted me to. He knew, Philippe said gently. That's why he set up the codicil. He knew that someday the truth would come out, and he made sure you'd be protected when it did. I thought about that DNA test from 2009, how Dad had kept the secret for years to preserve family peace. But he'd also made sure that if the truth ever emerged, I wouldn't be the one who suffered for it. 3 years after that Thanksgiving dinner, here's where we all ended up. Brandon Morrison lives in San Diego, working for his biological father's real estate company. He's successful, not wildly so, but solid. He's engaged to someone who doesn't know about his past as Brandon Nolan, who loves him for who he is now, not who he pretended to be. He sends a donation to the Nolan Foundation every Christmas, no note attached. Patricia. I can't call her mom anymore. Still works at the grocery store in Revere. She lives alone, no friends, no family willing to claim her. The society pages she once graced now feature stories about the Nolan Foundation, always mentioning it was founded by Robert Nolan's daughter, without ever naming her. She sees my success everywhere but can't claim any connection to it. Aunt Margaret moved to Monaco 6 months ago. At 72, she decided she'd rather spend her remaining years near the only family member who'd ever made her feel welcome. We have tea every Sunday, and she tells me stories about Dad that Mom never wanted me to hear. The extended family pretends Thanksgiving 2021 never happened. When someone brings it up, they change the subject. Jennifer's video is still circulating, a permanent reminder of their complicity in my humiliation. And me? I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, running a foundation that actually helps people, living in a place where nobody knows me as Patricia's disappointment or Brandon's sister. Dating someone who sees me as whole, not as someone to fix or use. We all ended up exactly where our choices led us. Brandon working for his real father, Mom alone with her lies, and me finally free. That's the thing about family. Blood doesn't make you loyal. Choice does. And I chose myself. That's my story of how winning the lottery revealed the real jackpot was freedom from toxic family. If you've made it this far, you're amazing. Please hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. Comment below, would you have given Brandon the money or kept it all? What boundaries have you set with your family? I read every comment and heart the best ones. Until next time, remember, your worth isn't determined by your family's opinion.